Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Scelzi Says. I'm Joe Castello, once again joined by the four-time Nitro champion, Gary Scelzi. Gary, welcome back.
Joe, great to be back. Seems like it's been forever.
It has been a little while. Well, we generated a lot of content for people to sort through. I think they've gotten through those episodes with the emails, and we're ready to roll again. And this time, we got the Winter Nationals to talk about.
Man, the times that they ran, the track conditions were perfect. Our girl funny car drivers were, I thought, spectacular. Very entertaining. We got Jeg coming back, letting him know he's for real. I don't know what else you could ask for.
And maybe a little drier and a little warmer. Just speaking for myself.
I thought the forecast was going to be perfect. It was sun all weekend, and the darn mountains there at Pomona, the little storm brewed up and a little bit of rain, and it looked pretty chilly.
Yeah, to say the least. But we got it in. It was a good time. I was out there. I saw a lot of people. They're listening to the show, Gary. They're out there. They're listening.
You know, it's funny, Joe, you mentioned I spoke to an unnamed NHRA official very high up on the ladder and said that they are listening. And he said he will be willing to answer some questions, and I'll let you know who that person is whenever we decide probably the four top questions that are going to need to be asked, if they can actually lead us a direction or let us a hint on what they're thinking. But they are listening, which is good, because sometimes I think the fans think that no one is listening. But believe me, NHRA is listening, so we got to hand it to them on that. And just a couple of little Italians maybe might be making a little bit of a wave.
Yeah.
And the fans.
Absolutely. And we do have some emails here today that we are going to get to, and I'm actually going to throw something out at the end of the show, throw it on the table, and maybe offer people a chance to call into the show via the system that we use on WFO radio. And so maybe we can hear some other voices on here directly from the fans. You know why I'm going to do that, Gary? Because these people are writing War and Peace, man. It's like 10-paragraph essays.
I know it. And they're all putting their names. Again, that is just so big, because like I said, we all watch the websites and the chat rooms, but a lot of the guys use the phony names and all that stuff. These people are real, and that's great. You got to listen to them.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to send in an email for Gary, Bobby at CompetitionPlus.com. That is the email address for Bobby Bennett. He checks them out, sends them over to us, and then we sort through them and use them on the show. At the end of this episode, I'll give a phone number where you can call, leave your name and your comment, and we'll play it for Gary in future episodes of the Scelzi Says. Now, before we get into these questions, Gary, couple of quick thoughts about the Winter Nationals. First of all, John Force goes out there and exercises the demons of a very difficult 2011. John has been known to do that. Spencer Massey, the mile-per-hour record, first race of the year, goes out there, runs 328 to 1,000 foot. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. What a shocker. I mean, we knew those guys were good. I mean, Todd Okahara and Phil Schuler were my crew chiefs for the funny car for half a season. They had Jack Beckman before. Those guys they're very smart, and they are not afraid to run hard. And this Top Fuel season is going to be amazing. But, man, again, we look at that just real quick. We're just going to touch on it, Joe. Cars are going awful fast. I think it's time to put restrictor plates and, and possibly go back to the quarter mile, get them back down to, the 470 range. But that was absolutely phenomenal. Perfect picture run. And that kid just doesn't make mistakes. He's on his game.
He really is. Absolutely is. And of course, the 1,000-foot deal is going to comes up in the emails, but there has always been, and I guess will always be, the discussion of what to do about this situation. And you're in favor of the restrictor plate now.
You know what? I'm a drag racer, and I like the 1,000-foot because of the safety. But I'm going to tell you, with Spencer Massey running what he's running, these funny cars dropping down to the 4.0s, and they're going to be running 390s pretty regular under the right conditions. It's just hard to stop these cars. And we're not going to not go to Englishtown, and we're going to not go to Pomona and some of these other places. You can't go back and forth from 1,000 foot to a quarter mile. You and I talked earlier before we started the show about cars actually passing each other while they're going down the track, even though it's a slower run. And I got to agree with the fans on the quarter mile thing. I was kind of against it in the beginning because, when you're driving a quick and fast car, it's hard to go backwards. Once I drove a nitro car, I didn't really want to drive an alcohol car anymore because of the thrill. I'm thinking the restrictor plate, the teams are never going to agree on what to do. Small fuel pumps, one magneto, smaller blowers, blah, 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 blah. Not going to happen. You put that restrictor plate on that NHRA hands out, slow them down. This is what it is, boys. Take it or leave it, and I'm sure they're going to take it. But remember, The big guys are still going to win the majority of the races. That's not going to change. So the Schumachers, the Forces, the Alan Johnsons of the world, they're going to dominate, and that's something you better get used to.
And all I will say is it's my opinion that whatever they do, there's going to be a flood of emails the next day saying that people hate it.
Yep, I agree.
And
that's their right.
Absolutely. The day, and Gary referenced a conversation we had. Let me just elaborate on it. In between rounds and whatnot, they show classic videos at the races of old school historic moments from the NHRA races. And I remember watching a run between Raymond Beadle and Kenny Bernstein, and it had to be pre-1984 because they were running the old Plymouth bodies. And you could see them. They were passing each other. One guy was in the lead. No, the other guy was in the lead. No, the other guy was in the lead. Who's going to win this thing? Oh, my goodness. And it's taking a certain amount of time for the drama of the run to unfold. And I've kind of thought to myself, wow, we don't really have that because it's only 3.7 seconds. There's not a lot of time to build drama in that. It's like, okay, it's over. And I think there's something to that, to being able to see going back and forth. But I guarantee the day we do that, Gary, someone's going to say, oh, they're too slow.
I know. And you know what? And that's part of why we, I guess, have this show. It's to agree and disagree and to have your opinion. And that's what makes this country so great. So I guess we'll deal with it when and if things happen. Who knows what's going to happen? Nobody's going to listen to us. We may be doing 1,000 foot for the rest of our lifetime. You never know. But I think that NHRA is listening, and I think they're going to do something. I just, don't know when.
For my money, the experience at an NHRA national event is worth it. I love it. I love the sounds, the smells, the experience at 1,000 foot or 1320 or a little slower, or a little faster, whatever they decide. I have a great time being around this group of hardworking people, innovators, sponsors, all the colors. It's just a great, unique experience regardless. These other things we can work out. All right, on to the questions. If you want to send one, it's Bobby@CompetitionPlus.com. Of course, Bobby Bennett. First one coming from William. Hello, here's my question for Gary. You are a guy who worked your way up. You ran your own car from the bottom. Where, with the problems facing drag racing today, do you see nitro drag racing in 10 or 20 years? I am 23 years old. I live in New Zealand and aspire to become a drag racer and work my way to the top. Yet my background has been from pretty low income, and I've been unemployed for 6 months. I watch NHRA drag racing from afar, but I have a hard time relating to the current racers, and most of my heroes raced in the 60s and 70s. With the current costs it takes to get into competitive nitro racing, where do you honestly see the future drivers to be coming from? And do you think we'll see the future more teams come along, or will multi-car teams be the norm with new drivers coming along as the old ones leave? Says William.
Well, where the future is, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But I can tell you the multi-car teams are here to stay. The big just keep getting bigger. Now, whether you like it or you don't, that's your choice. Personally, I don't like it, but I don't have a cure for it. All I can tell you is, to start from the ground up is very difficult. I beat on the doors of Prudhomme, Jack Clark, Roger Prim, the Peak Brothers. Those are all names that some of you may know, and the door was slammed in my face every week. Unfortunately, the loss of Blaine Johnson, Alan Johnson remembered me from the alcohol days and happened to give me a call. It was a 1 in a million shot, and I got my shot. Where things are going nowadays, I think it's the days of the kids that can bring some money or just happen to be lucky enough to be on a crew and an owner gives them a shot, which I don't see that happening very often anymore. I don't know. All I can tell you is live your dream, work as hard as you can at it, hope for the best, and expect the worst. Unfortunately, I don't have any answers. I have a lot of young guys asking me, and my deal will just happen to be a fluke how it happened.
Well, let's do the math here. There's how many positions worldwide available for these guys? 32? 16 pretty much, 20 or so in funny car, 20 or so in top fuel. But as far as really good quality teams, less than that, this is a very highly competitive field. You can't just walk in.
No. You got Force with mainly all family members. You got Schumacher with, some hired drivers and stuff, but most of those guys all had backgrounds in something or bring something to the table. Caps did it the old fashioned way. Beckman did it the old fashioned way. So there's still hope, for the, Antron Brown. and I don't know the background of everybody there either, but, there is a shot. Don can always pull somebody out, but, you've only got Don Schumacher. You've got Coletta. You got Alan Johnson with a couple of drivers, and you got Force with the big teams. It's tough. You got Lucas now that's starting to shine. He's a 2-car team. That seems to come from background of the sportsman. Forrest Lucas still looks at sportsman racers bringing them up, and so again, it's a tough shot. Work hard at it, and like I said, hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst.
You know what all those guys that you just mentioned have in common, Gary?
What's that?
Schumacher, Force, Coletta. These guys have been around for a long time, and NHRA. This is not anything they can do. But there's going to have to be some sort of torch passed to the 35 to 40-year-old owners who have money, who can take over this sport when the Connie Colettas decide, you know what, however old, just like what Kenny Bernstein just did. Kenny decided, hey, I've been successful. I want to go play golf. This is going to happen.
It is, and there is no control over it. I was a little shocked that the torch didn't get passed to Brandon. Don't know the circumstances involved, and maybe Kenny just wanted to be done, and that's Kenny's choice, and obviously Kenny's right. Don't know what, maybe Brandon didn't want to be a car owner. There's several different things. Is Tony Schumacher going to take over for Don Schumacher when Don decides he's had enough? You never know. Is Doug going to take over for Connie when that pin gets pulled? Again, those are questions we can't answer. We can only speculate. But I'm sure life's going to go on. Drag racing is going to go on. It's a great sport. As long as Goodyear builds tires and somebody builds nitromethane, somebody's going to be racing.
Absolutely. Next question. If Gary could discuss the following on the show, it would be great regarding slowing the fuel cars down. Why not simply require the teams to run smaller rear tires as they do in nostalgia drag racing?
Well, we've got Goodyear as our only tire supplier. Right now, these cars can smoke the tires at will anywhere on the racetrack from 1,000 foot to 60 feet. We have too much tire smoke as it is. In the summer months with some racetracks that are one-lane racetracks, Goodyear's not going to spend the money to make a smaller, narrower tire. I think the tire we've got is fine. I think it's able, the weight of the cars and all that kind of stuff that's involved is a factor. You don't want a smaller car. I think the nostalgia races are great, but they're running on a small tire. I think they're dangerous as hell. They're revving those nitro motors up to 11,000 RPMs, and God forbid, I think that's just a bomb waiting to happen at any time. I'm not a big fan of it. I like the nostalgia races. I like the idea, but where they're going with those things and the small tires, and I think they're just going too fast with the technology we got, and those guys need to be slowed down, if you ask me.
It's very tough. Every motorsport is fighting against its own self. The instinct to go as fast as possible, the technology all of a sudden to go as fast as possible, and then the reality of physics and safety. Very difficult.
Yep.
Next question, this one coming from Mike. Hey, Scelzi, a thought crossed my mind last year while watching NHRA drags on TSN, our only network that shows them here in Canada. Generally, the big teams qualify in the top half of the field, in Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock, with the lesser-funded teams in the bottom half. Seldomly does 16 beat number 1. Why not have the number 1 race number 9, 2 race 10, 3 race 11, and so on, ending with 8 running 16. To me, this would make it more of a challenge for the super teams in the top qualifying positions, having to run better cars in the first round of competition. I feel this might tighten things up just a bit. Just a thought, says Mike from Ontario.
Well, I think it's a great thought. I think it's a great idea. And, honestly, I don't know why it changed.
Yeah,
I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. I don't know. I know that as confusing as it is, taking only the top 12 after Friday's qualifying session, or after each, Friday qualifying session, or each day, and like you have in Pomona or Indy, that was because if you messed up on the night run, there were still some slots open to get a big name guy in, or whoever still had another shot to qualify, and that was basically Kenny Bernstein that came up with that. But as far as why we don't run, one doesn't run 8 or 9, or I don't know why that changed. But yeah, you might be onto something there. But whether they'd change that or not, I don't know. But I think that's a great question, and I don't have an answer for you.
And this is one of those opportunities where if we had Bob Fry or Alan Reinhart here, or Louis Bloom, for instance, they would say, well, actually last year, number 16 beat number 1 this many times at these races. And it did happen several times last year. I just don't have everyone committed to memory. But it happens more often than you realize.
No, it does. I know, when I raced for Alan Johnson, especially in the beginning when we were number 1 qualifier, and we had to race a car of lesser caliber, those cars scared me the worst because those are the ones that would always unload their best light or guess and their best ET that they'd ever run in their life, and they do it against us. So it happens a lot more than you say, exactly, because the Jimmy Procs of the world are going after it first round, or they're trying to back their car down and it shakes. And just using Jimmy for an example, Alan Johnson, of course, he goes for the moon every time, so it doesn't really matter what Alan's going to do. But, it is difficult for that higher qualified car to race a lesser qualified car because they're supposed to win, and sometimes they don't make the right move.
Next question, this one coming from Christopher, and this is one of those, he basically lays out his whole story. I'm going to paraphrase it as best as I can. Gary, I'm a longtime fan of yours and a longtime fan of NHRA drag racing. That's why I'm taking this opportunity to email you a few thoughts I have on the current state of the association. I've been attending what is now the Summit Racing Equipment Nationals in Norwalk, Ohio, every year since 1996. When it was in Hebron, Ohio. My father wouldn't let me go until I was 14 because back at the old National Trail, a weekend camping in the field could get interesting, to say the least. It was muddy, it was loud, it smelled of beer and porta-johns, but after seeing and feeling Kenny Bernstein hit 300 miles per hour in qualifying and catching my first head full of nitro fumes, I was hooked. My father has been attending the same race since 1989. But somewhere around 2002, 2003, the annual trip to the drags wasn't the same. John Force with 30 trailers and 20 cars. There was very little chance to win a race for anyone other than the big teams if your team wasn't one of the elite ultra wealthy. Cleaning the track for 20 minutes after every top fuel run has got to stop. And he says there are a lot of issues that just don't seem right. Like I said earlier, it's hard to point at just one. The fans of the sport can tell the difference whether it's genuine or not. Nothing about the NHRA feels genuine or real anymore. Not the cookie-cutter cars, not the private jet flying drivers, not the complaining team owners, not the four-wide tracks, not even the mud on my shoes from the campground. Thank you for taking the time, says Christopher. That is a paraphrase.
Well, I can tell you, they don't build new Model A's anymore. So some of those things are going to be gone, and they're going to be gone forever. I don't know too many of the drivers that fly around in private jets, so I don't know where that comes from.
Do you know any?
The drag racers are probably the most underpaid drivers for what they do compared to any other motorsport. We talked about it there for a while, Joe, about myself in a private jet. I got offered a private jet to get me back and forth a couple of times. I didn't ask for it. I don't know many people that do fly on private jets other than Doug Coletta, and he flies it for his uncle.
That's his business.
But, it's just business, and things are going to be what they are. And the super teams have evolved. There's no more guys that bring their NASCARs on the back of a trailer and go run a 600-mile race anymore. So those days are gone. You can still go camp, Brainerd, Minnesota, and Ohio, and Indianapolis, and there's several racetracks that still goes on, and you can still smell the porta potties and everything else if that's what you're into. So a lot has changed, a lot has stayed the same. I appreciate you being a fan, but I don't know that you're even close on some of the things that you're talking about. It's just it's the way life is. So you either enjoy it and take it for what it is, or you move on.
It's all about personal perspective. The Boss has got a song called Glory Days, and it's because everybody does that. Everything was better when we were younger and cooler and hipper and stronger and better looking. Everything. I love the sport. Yeah, there are things that could be changed, but what are you going to blame John Force for being successful? This guy's he's not flying around in a private jet. I can't think of anyone. I think it's real easy to confuse Ron Capps, who's wearing Napa gear, and Martin Truex, who's wearing Napa gear, as if they get paid the same, but they don't.
I agree. John Force and I used to fly with John. We'd meet in Dallas a lot of times on American Airlines because that's the hub for Dallas, and that's where I would say 99.9% of the drivers, not American Airlines, but obviously commercial airlines. I used to make a joke that my private airline was American Airline, and I flew with 200 of my closest friends. So, yeah, but I did get to fly in a private jet. So there are some perks that you get to do every now and then, but nobody has a jet. Nobody gets to do that on a regular basis, trust me. And it's certainly not the drivers.
And you're doing okay, but you don't own a jet. Like, there's a big difference between owning a jet and just being successful enough to go racing.
You know, Joe, my majority of the time I spent, I would fly from Fresno to Indy. Someone would pick me up, take me to the race shop. That's where my motorhome was at. I'd hop in the motorhome and I'd follow the rig to the next race. And I rode with the guys. In fact, Aaron Brooks, who was the assistant crew chief, and Rob Santori, who are actually with Morgan Lucas right now, used to drive the coach with me, and we'd follow the transporters. And on Sundays, when the racetracks were when everything was loaded up, we'd hop back in and race back to Indy in the motorhome. We'd take shifts driving. And then on the 2-week tours, and Caps does the same thing. A lot of the drivers drive their Jack Beckman. They drive their coaches to the races following the teams, and sometimes they have appearances to do, and so maybe a crew member will drive it, and they have to fly commercial to go do an appearance for their sponsors. But John Force of One, if anybody could afford a private jet, it'd be John, and he flies commercial airlines. So, that's kind of a false varsity.
Listen, that's what we're trying to do here is delve through this. These, like you said, Gary, these are the opinions of the fans, and they're putting them forth, and we're mowing through them. Like this next one coming from Randall, I would suggest condensing national events from 3 days to 2 days. Run 4 qualifying sessions on Friday, run eliminations on Saturday, and use Sunday as a rain day makeup if needed. I know this would save the fans a lot of money and probably the racers too. That's part one. What do you think?
4 rounds in 1 day and qualifying and then come back the next day is pretty tough on the crews, but it's possible. I believe in shortening these races. I'm for that. It's a big cost. The Pomona thing is tough. Indy is tough. But there's no other way to do it, Pomona, with the schools around there. You can only run after 3:00, and to get those runs in, you can't get them in on Friday. You got to do the 1 on Thursday, 1 on Friday, and then the 2 on Saturday. So I'm all for condensing that. But, on 4 on 1 day, it'd be kind of tough. But, hey, who's to say you couldn't do 3 qualifying rounds in 1 day? You get what you get, and race on Saturday. I like that idea. I really do. You got the Cup guys, who's somebody big that we have a tough time competing against, and those guys race on Sunday, so it would eliminate that and leave Sunday for a rain date. It's not a bad idea.
Interesting, to say the least. If I'm messing with the schedule, I'm building the schedule around Saturday night racing. That would be what I would do, a pet project, because these cars are the most impressive at night. And we all grow up with Saturday night racing, and that's how you become a racer, is by Saturday night racing. I would love to figure out how to do that if I'm doing anything.
I would love that. Big fan of the night racing, but a lot of these racetracks, Atlanta, Georgia, Phoenix, Arizona, Seattle, Washington, some of these places have like flashlights for lighting. If the racetracks would put in lighting and make the driver safe so he could actually see where in the hell he's going, I think that night thing would be a big deal. You could start eliminations during the day and go into the evening. That would be a big deal. I like that.
See, you drivers, you just want lights.
You got to be able to see, Joe. I'm telling you, those funny cars, all that clutch dust blowing in your face and the header flame reflecting off the windshield, and you can't see where in the hell you're going. You need some lighting out there.
I believe it. His email is multifaceted. I'm going to pick another part. He talks about how the summertime is too hot, which obviously, but, we have to all go through it. But this is a point that he makes I think is important. This is Randall. Entirely too much downtime is happening at national event as a result of oil downs. I would suggest 2 ways to solve this. 1, use the current engine and drivetrain combinations with restrictor plates and smaller or restricted fuel pumps to reduce engine horsepower from the 8,000 down to 5,000, where the cars would run 480s or 470s with speeds around 300 to 315 miles per hour, or with less power, let the cars run a 290 or lower gear to keep the engine RPM under 7,000 RPMs. It seems to me that the 320 gear rule, that there has been more engine explosions because of the higher RPMs they turn. The combination of less RPM and power with current engines would last much longer, reduce cost on owners, less aborted runs, and much less downtime for oil downs. Or the other options I suggest is use the aforementioned gear rule, RPM philosophy, and remove the superchargers from the cars and let them run electronic timers and more advanced controls on everything with unlimited nitro percentage. I believe this is what I call unlimited A fuel and would run 480s at 310. Gary?
Got to have that supercharger.
Got to have the supercharger.
Got to have a supercharger. You can't not have a supercharger in Top Fuel.
No way.
They have rev limiters to
Communism.
keep the RPMs down. The gear ratio, we figured out how to rev up a nitro motor. That's just things involving. We can put the restrictor plates on. I'm a big advocate of that. I really think that's the most inexpensive way to go. Kills power. Put whatever fuel pump you want on the thing. I don't care, because with that restrictor plate, you're only going to get so much air into those cylinders, and it's only going to take so much fuel. So but they're still going to blow up. I agree with you 1,000%. The oil downs are time consuming and make me crazy as a fan sitting in the stands. I want to see those cars go down the racetrack with no oil downs. I don't know. NHRA has mandated fines. They've taken away points. They've done everything they can to try to get the crew chiefs to make those things. And they're not making them blow up on purpose. Trust me. They don't want the damage, and neither do the owners. It costs a lot of money to do that. But I don't think Pomona was too bad as far as engine explosions and that type of things are going.
It was fine.
You were there, Joe.
It was
Did
fine.
it seem bad in qualifying?
No. There was one or two incidents where a driver did have an issue. It was a lower-funded team, probably doesn't have the resources to get all the diapers and various different means with which to keep the oil in. But I don't really recall long periods of downtime other than for a couple of incidents, and crashes are things that you're just, it's going to happen.
Part of the game.
And everyone hates it when it does.
I will tell you one thing, though. Track prep is a huge thing as far as oil downs go. When you're running on racetracks that are greasy, that aren't sprayed and glued in really good, it's also a lot easier to blow things up when they're smoking the tire and you're pedaling the car and, all that fuel is going in there and you relight it. It's, you're kind of asking for trouble there. I know Pomona had cloud cover. The track was tight. It was in good shape. Both lanes were equal, and I think that's a big part of keeping it down. But the crew chiefs aren't blowing up on purpose. I like the restrictor plate thing. I think that'll help because they will have to back them off. And, I appreciate your comments, but, it's got to have superchargers. Sorry.
Must have superchargers. Like, for everything else he could have said, you can't take superchargers off funny cars and dragsters. It's something different then.
Absolutely.
It would look so strange. No injector sticking up out of the body. What would you have?
That's a plain bologna sandwich right there. And I've seen more injected nitro cars blown up than anything on this planet. Believe me, that's not the answer.
No, definitely not. All right, final question for Gary. This one coming from Sheila. Hi, Gary. Welcome back and enjoy your new adventure. The only dislike I have with drag racing is the limited amount of airtime of the races. Definitely not enough nitro racing, pro mod, sportsman racing, and what is shown on TV is so scattered, I can't keep up with it. It would be great to sit on my butt in front of the TV and watch the drags, the whole race. That might be a little much, but I think you get the picture, right? Just seems unfair. Thanks for reading and caring about us little people out here. Look forward to seeing you this year. Good luck with NHRA. Sure, you will be getting a lot of this. Oh, and why is it that the other sports have to run into the little time we have already for drag racing? Yeah, I know. The entire scheduled taping is run to the end, of which sometimes can run into the wee hours of the AM. Sucks for work the next day. LOL, says Sheila.
Well, Sheila, thank you for your email. I thought the shows were pretty good. I thought it was really good. I thought they gave everybody pretty much equal time. I think that they show the top fuel cars run the top fuel cars. They go to funny car, they go to pro stock. But what they do is they mix up interviews with top fuel, funny car, and whatever. They're always slipping those interviews in there. And I think that's to keep the viewer sitting in the seat, because I believe, and not just because I was a fuel racer, that's what people want to watch are the funny cars and the top fuel dragsters. Not the pro stock's not great racing, but I think the majority of the people want to watch the fuel cars. The TV shows, the timing on that, ESPN is going to show a live basketball game, baseball game, whatever it is. If it's live, they're going to show it in its entirety until it's finished, and then the drag race is going to go on because it is taped. So as bad as that may be, that's the way the rules are, and I know that from when I raced, because we used to say we wanted a specific start time every Sunday, and it's just not going to happen. So we're not going to be able to fix that part. But I thought the show was good. I watched, I TiVoed it, actually. but they do put the interviews in there. Top Fuel guys interviewing. They talked to Alexis and Del Worsham while they were running pro stock, or vice versa, and with Courtney her interviews and John's, they mix things up. And I think it's to keep the captive audience. That's just my opinion.
Well, people want to know who these people are. You want to know their personalities, and the only way to do that is to have them on camera and ask them questions. That's part of it. I always thought that the ESPN3 online streaming model was the future of the sport. It looks like they're not going to do that this year, which is kind of a bummer. But you know how, for instance, WFO radio is built on the internet. Anyone can get it from anywhere in the world at any time. That's the future of sports like drag racing. It's unfortunate. It looks like they're taking a step backwards with that this year.
No, they do. And one other thing we didn't touch on much, I want to say the two rookie girls, Alexis and Courtney, I think our sport is in good hands with those two rookie drivers. Courtney looks so natural behind. And believe me, I'm one of the guys that bitched about Force getting too much TV time too, and I still continue to bitch. But let me tell you something. Courtney is her own woman. Ashley was wonderful in her own way. She did a great job behind the camera. But I believe that both those Force girls, Courtney right now, who we're talking about, and I'm sure Brittany's going to be the same way, are very relaxed, very honest, show their emotions, throw the sponsors in, but not in a bad way. I thought she was wonderful and very artistic the way she did it. Alexis, I'll tell you one thing. I love this girl. I talked to her on the phone. I just love what she's got. She's the real deal. She wants to do this. And when they were interviewing after she got beat, I love the fire. Yeah, okay, we got beat first round, blah, blah. But I could tell she was pissed. And I like that. That girl is on that wheel heavy. You could see her hacking the wheel on the in-car stuff. I can't wait to watch those two. If nothing else, I'm going to watch just to watch and see how those two girls do. I was excited about it.
We got to come up with some sort of nickname, though, like Fire and Ice or something. Alexis with the dark black hair, Courtney with the light blonde hair. They're just two totally different but the same kind of thing. I don't know. There's something there. I just haven't really developed it yet.
Definitely two opposites, but I like where both of them are coming from. I really do.
Totally. And there you have it. Those are the email questions for Gary. Gary, this weekend, the Arizona Nationals and race number 2.
Hope the track's prepared well. I like to see two-lane racing. Hasn't been that way in the past, but I'm hoping that Charlie Allen, I know they've done some repaving, and they ran last year at the end of the year. They should be good. I'm sure that NHRA is going to put a lot of effort in it. The one thing that we've got in our sport that no other motorsport has is the safety safari. They keep our drivers safe even when there's accidents, and they keep that track prepared. So I'm hoping that they get to do their job. I hope they've got a surface to work with. So I'll be excited. I'll be watching it on TV on Sunday from my couch with a nice cold Powerade.
All right, Gary, and so here's what I'm going to do now. Since paraphrasing and reading these emails is just very difficult, we're going to give the listeners for the next edition of the Scelzi Says an opportunity to ask you a question in their own words, and that way they'll have to moderate their question. Here's the number, folks, 954-889-6796. What you do, call, leave your name, say it's a question for Gary, and then present your question and or comment. And in future episodes, we will play your audio to Gary, and he will respond to you asking your question or making your comment. How do you like that, Gary? We're going to get some voices of fans on this show so we can hear directly from them.
I love it. I think that's great. I mean, the more interacting we can do with the fans and get to know them, the better off we are. And I look forward to it. And I appreciate everybody with your emails, and I appreciate all you listeners. I can't believe how many people are listening. And a lot of the racers, Aaron Brooks told me that he can't wait for the next session. A lot of the other racers are listening to this and wanting to hear what we've got to say. So it's all good.
So if you want to get a hold of Gary, ask a question, make a comment, you can either email Bobby at CompetitionPlus.com or call our wide open line, 954-889-6796. Leave your name, say it's for Gary, and give your comment, your question. Obviously, keep it a reasonable amount of time, and we'll use it right here on the show. Scelzi Says. Gary, excellent work. Once again, just like I said, this was 10 minutes, nothing, right?
Yeah, an hour later. All right. So they just can't keep our hands tied, right?
We have too much fun talking about drag racing.
That's it. It's a beautiful thing.
Gary, thank you very much. Excellent work as usual.
Thanks, Joe. Talk to you soon.
He's a four-time champ. I'm Joe Castello from WFO Radio, and this is the Scelzi Says.